This message found you today. Your future self says it was supposed to, not by accident, not randomly, because there's a version of you ahead in time already knows what your life is about to become. And honestly, that version of you has been trying to reach you for a while through your intuition, through your restlessness, through the feeling that your current life no longer matches the size of your spirit. Because your future self keeps showing me that many of you watching this were never meant to live small lives. You were never meant to spend your entire existence barely surviving, emotionally or financially, constantly shrinking yourself to fit inside limitations. You are the cycle breaker in your family, the one who was meant to go further, further financially, further emotionally, further spiritually, and further in freedom. And I know part of you struggles to believe that because your current reality may not reflect that yet. Maybe you still feel stuck, still feel uncertain, still feel like you're carrying pressure that nobody else really sees. But your future self says the version of you who becomes wealthy does not begin with money first. It begins with identity. And later in this reading, your future self wants to explain why your entire timeline is already shifting emotionally before your external reality catches up. Because once you understand that, you'll stop panicking during this in between phase of transformation. Your future self keeps showing me that many of you have spent years in survival mode, not really dreaming, just surviving, trying to stay emotionally afloat, trying to hold everything together, trying to remain hopeful while secretly exhausted. And honestly, some of you became so used to struggle that peace started to feel unrealistic. That's what survival mode does. It trains people to expect limitations, to expect disappointment, to expect scarcity, to expect life to always feel heavy. But your future self says something has started changing inside of you recently, and you can feel it. Strange pull towards something bigger. Quiet knowing that your life is not supposed to stay this way forever. That restlessness, that discomfort, your future self says that's what happens when your soul begins outgrowing your old timelines. Because the old version of you cannot emotionally hold the reality that's trying to reach you. That's why this season feels strange sometimes. Part of you still feels connected to your old identity, and another part is already sensing your new life. You're sensing the abundance, sensing the movement, sensing a life that your current self can barely imagine yet. When your future self keeps repeating something, you are not behind. You are preparing. And that's different because some of you think preparation means that nothing's happening. But your future self says the most important transformation happens invisibly first, internally, and that's quiet. Like roots growing underground before anything breaks through the surface. And your future self keeps showing me that a lot of you are standing at the edge of a completely different life right now, a different financial state, a different emotional state, a different version of yourself. But before abundance enters, your identity has to expand first. That's why your standards are changing. What you tolerate is changing. What you desire is changing. What drains you is changing. You don't want constant chaos anymore. You don't want emotionally exhausting relationships anymore. You don't want to keep living inside survival mode anymore because your spirit is beginning to remember what it came here for freedom. And I know some of you feel guilty even wanting that, like wanting wealth, wanting abundance, wanting a beautiful life. But your future self wants you to hear this today. You were never meant to struggle forever just to prove humility. You were meant to expand. You were meant to experience abundance without shame. And honestly, I think some of you have spent so much time around other people who normalize limitation that dreaming bigger started to feel dangerous. Maybe you were told that you need to be realistic, or don't expect too much, or life is hard, or money doesn't grow on trees. And slowly, those beliefs became sort of an emotional ceiling. But your future self says those ceilings are breaking because your spirit is finally becoming honest about what it truly wants. And the part that nobody realizes about manifestation is that the universe often upgrades someone emotionally before upgrading them physically. And that's the phase that you're in right now, the emotional upgrade. You're becoming more intentional, more self aware, more disciplined, more emotionally honest, and more protective of your energy. Those are all exact traits that change someone's financial reality over time because abundance flows differently when someone stops emotionally identifying with the struggle. Because your future self keeps showing me that many of you inherited a survival mentality. You inherited fear around money, fear around success, fear around visibility, or fear around becoming too much. And I know this firsthand because this was passed down to me too from my parents and grandparents. And unconsciously, part of you kept shrinking yourself to remain emotionally familiar with everyone else around you. You don't want to be the oddball, right? But your future self says you cannot become the millionaire in your family while emotionally clinging to that old scarcity mentality, that old scarcity identity. At some point, your nervous system has become available for expansion. And that's what's happening now. You're beginning to realize that your current reality is not your final reality. That realization changes people deeply because once someone truly believes their future can expand, their behavior changes. Their energy changes, their standards change, their decisions change, and eventually their entire life changes. Your future self keeps showing me blessings are already moving towards you. Specific blessings, unexpected opportunities, financial openings, aligned connections, new ideas, new confidence, new momentum. And some of those blessings are going to arrive in ways that you could never have predicted. Because your future self says that the universe does not operate only through human planning. Sometimes things align suddenly. Conversations shift suddenly, doors open suddenly, opportunities appear suddenly. And many people call it luck. But your future self says it's alignment. Alignment finally catches up to the version of you you've been becoming internally. And I think some of you are going to notice this first through your intuition. Like maybe you have a stronger inner knowing or a stronger pull toward certain ideas, certain decisions, certain risks, certain changes. So pay attention to that because your future self says the next version of your life cannot be built through fear. Trust has to enter the picture. And I don't mean like blindly trusting, but self trust. The kind that says, my current circumstances are temporary, or my future is still unfolding, or I'm allowed to become someone my past could not imagine. That kind of energy changes timelines. Your future self keeps showing me that many of you are about to surprise yourselves because you're going to suddenly become someone else overnight. You finally stop abandoning your own potential. And that's a huge shift because wealth is not only money, It's also capacity, the capacity to hold more, to receive more, to believe in more, to become more. And some of you are finally reaching the point where your spirit is tired of settling for less than your soul came here for. Your future self says that there's a version of you ahead that no longer wakes up afraid all the time. A version of you who no longer feels trapped. A version of you finally able to breathe. Calmer, lighter, and a more secure version of yourself. Because you stopped emotionally identifying with the struggle as your identity. And that's when the reality begins changing the fastest, when the internal identity shifts first. Your future self says many of you watching this are entering a completely different timeline now. The old version of you was surviving, the new version is building, building wealth, building peace, building freedom, building legacy. And yeah, you might be a little scared at first because growth and expansion always feels unfamiliar before it starts to feel natural. But your future self says that fear is not proof that you're on the wrong path. Sometimes fear is simply proof that your old identity knows that it can't follow you into your new chapter, your new identity. That's why this message reached you tonight, I think, because your future self wanted to remind you of something before your reality begins to really shift. You were never forgotten. You were never overlooked. You were being prepared, preparing for the version of yourself who finally stops living beneath their potential, preparing for the life that your spirit has been trying to lead you to this entire time. And your future self says the blessings coming toward you now are not random. They are the result of every moment you kept going, even when you were exhausted. Every moment that you refused to give up on yourself. Every moment that your soul quietly whispered, there has to be more than this. Because there is. And honestly, I think deep down, you already know it. Until next time, stay magnetic, friends.